Welcome back in for another episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. As always, myself, Logan Lepiscopo, will be sitting down with my co-host, Seth Adams, talking about Waynesburg athletics. We had a pretty busy past week. We've had football, wrestling, cross country, competed in nationals, and men's and women's basketball. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
So we're going to break it down for you in the opening segment, and we will have plenty of analysts, I should say 3 analysts, not plenty, to talk about wrestling, men's and women's basketball. Starting off, the football team, they just closed out its season with a 33-28 loss to the Presidents. We'll talk a little bit in depth about this, but what are your overall thoughts from this game?
You know what? I don't really think Waynesburg lost this game. Hear me out. All right, they're down 33-7 at half. Not really looking good, looking like a typical Waynesburg game. Here they come out of the half and put up 21 unanswered and make it 33-28 and have a chance of coming back against this W&J team who has been fighting for the top of the PAC almost all year. And Waynesburg puts up a battle against them to finish off the year. Oh, shocker. I don't know. For me, I was like, whoa. And I was like, maybe last year. Think of it last year. Let's go back in time. All right. W&J last year, we got smacked. And I feel like it kind of cemented the beginning of this year. Now this year we ended with a Bethany win 2 weeks ago. This W&J game, which wasn't so great, maybe it's cementing maybe a brighter future for this football team.
I was going to say the same thing. On my paper, I have listed as a statement win for the Yellow Jackets because obviously you fall short by 5 points. But in reality, this is the most points you've scored against the Presidents since the last time you beat the Presidents, which was way too long ago. We were in middle school the last time that Waynesburg was able to beat the Presidents. But I think looking forward for this team, it was just a statement to the PAC as a whole. You see Waynesburg 2-7 going into the 7-2 Washington Jefferson Presidents. Knowing the history, you're expecting a 50-plus point win for Washington Jefferson. Let's just be real. That's what people expect, especially after the last 3 years, 177 points to none in the last 3 matchups. So I think it's a big win for the football team. You got Zane Cawley, who looked amazing once again.
Oh my goodness.
You lose Justin Flack. You lose a couple other key guys defensively and offensively. But I think this is still going to be a very good team next year. And maybe they live up to the expectations that were set for this season next year.
Yeah. Zane Cawley looking good, looking very promising. I think they'll be all right next year.
So you have Zane Cawley, Hunter Cameron, the 2-headed monster back there in the running back room. So we'll see what happens with those two when it comes to that. But now moving on to wrestling, the other heavy hitters. We'll sit down with Mia Hankins and talk about it a little bit more. But, Seth, there's only one name that continues to stay at the top, not only in the PAC, but in Division III wrestling, Colby Morris.
Yeah, Colby Morris, man. He's just an absolute unit. Won again, and this week at the Washington Jefferson Invitational. The team finished 9th out of 18, but it doesn't change the fact that Colby has just been outstanding and continues to put up numbers that are just unbelievable. Excuse me. Unreal. I don't know. You can take it as you will. I don't care. It was unbelievable.
And then you have another wrestler, Josh Kuslok. He finished 5th among the 141-pound group. He's actually the reigning 133-pound PAC champ. So he's moved up in a weight class. Maybe it's just for that invitational. Maybe it's for the season. We'll stay tuned on Jacket Sports Weekly to find out more. Moving on, cross country. They had the NCAA Division III Mid-Atlantic Regional Championships. That's a mouthful.
I know, right?
Talk a little bit about how the men and women did.
Yeah, so the men, they finished 18th out of the 31, and the women finished 16th out of the 29 altogether as a team. But some soul. We'll talk about the men first in the cross country. And the men, senior Andrew Casper finished the highest. He finished 65th out of 211, which I'd say is pretty good, with a time of 26 minutes and 26 seconds. So, and there were some other ones. Quentin Weaver, the graduate student, he finished 78th out of the 211 with a 26:35. So I mean, they played pretty consistent. They ran pretty consistent.
And on the women's side, you had Grace Tanksley and Gabby Reifensnyder, both with top 100 finishes. So congratulations to the women's side as well, both finishing in that upper half, or say middle of the ground, for the NCAA D3 Regional Championships. Now, women's basketball, we'll be talking with our analyst Joey Shirillo. And despite an 0-2 record, and despite the losses seeming very substantial, it's an improvement from what it was last year against Case and Muskingum.
Yeah, like 96. They scored 96 on us last year, Muskingum, and they only scored 63 on us this year. It's a big difference in this team. 3 freshmen starting. We'll get to more on how they're doing later with Joey, but the team just looks different. But they're not. I just think that they're gonna make some improvements and they're gonna get better, but they're not gonna be wow yet because they got a very young team. Marley Wolf is still out there, hopefully to lead this team and to cement a future for them. But they've had some slow starts and maybe some slow finishes as well. Like they had a slow start in the Muskingum game. They only had 8 points in the first quarter, and then in the Case Western game, they only had 18 points in the second half, and Case had 36. So kind of a iffy. You know?
Just got to play a complete game of basketball at this point for the ladies. They'll have some games coming up that they'll look to improve on that. They'll have an out-of-conference game, and then they will have the Bethany Bison, which will be their first conference game coming up this Saturday. Now, on the men's side of things, a little bit of a better start, and it's not so much the young guns coming in and showing up for the team. It's the transfers that have come in for this men's team and really shaped it out to get this 2-1 start.
Yeah, they look good, man. I feel like when I'm watching them play with some enthusiasm, some fire, and it looks really different from last year. Like 2-1 already, beat McDaniel 64-52, and they went to the Bill Sudik Holiday Tournament. They lost 82-62 in the first game, but they won in overtime 81-80 against Pitt, right? It was
Pitt Greensburg.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I knew it was Pitt.
No, Pitt Bradford.
Pitt Bradford. That looks bad on our part. I promise we did our homework. I got paper.
There's a lot of
I got
Pitts
paper
out
to
there,
prove
you
it.
know?
Listen, I did it. I just forgot. I forgot what Pitt it was. But anyway, yeah, they looked really good. The new faces, Corey Mitchum, PJ Suggs, Jordan McLeod, they look really solid. And it looks like this team is going to have a lot of fun and play some consistent basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. The transfers, like we said, come in. They've taken over. They bring some light out in the Rudy Marusa Fieldhouse. We saw in the opener. They were just getting the crowd way into the game. It was super exciting, a great atmosphere to be in. Their next game, they've got a full week off. So their last game against Pitt Bradford, got it right this time, Pitt Bradford, they will not play from a week. So this Saturday, they'll travel with the women's team to play Bethany as well in a doubleheader at Bethany College. But that's going to do it for our opening segment, talking about all the Waynesburg sports currently going on. We'll be right back with you, sitting down with Mia Hankins and talking about the wrestling team. Welcome back into Jacket Sports Weekly. Myself, Logan Lepiscopo, and Seth Adams will now be talking about wrestling with our analyst, Mia Hankins. Mia was on just a couple of weeks ago talking about some of our other athletic programs. Now we've dished you on to wrestling, and I don't think there's another name that needs introduced other than Colby Morris. Talk about what he did at the W&J Invitational and even the McKinley Invitational.
So Colby Morris is a senior here at Waynesburg. He is a phenomenal wrestler. He was actually the Pack Wrestler of the Week. He was named that recently this week. And he went 5-0 at the King's College Ned McGinley Invitational. He's actually ranked 7th in the country in the 174-pound weight class, which is insane for somebody here at Waynesburg to be ranked that nationwide. He's also received the Pack Most Outstanding Wrestler of the Pack Championship Tournament twice, actually, not just once. And he placed second at the NCAA Division III Southeast Regional Championships last year. He was actually one win shy of earning All-American honors at Nationals. And he finished last season with a record of 28-4, and he enters this season with a 57-11 record overall as a Yellow Jacket. So he is definitely phenomenal, and he is our best wrestler here at Waynesburg, I would say.
Yeah, the dude is an absolute beast. He's a unit. But, there's also been a lot of freshmen who have been playing recently and a lot of new faces and a lot of first wins for some of these players. So can you, Mia, go over the freshmen who maybe have won their first game, have made an impact, and had some success over these last couple of invitations?
Yeah, so there's definitely been a lot of freshmen stepping up this year. Freshman Braden Barbeo received his first collegiate win at the Ned McGinley Invitational, and freshman Gavin Novak also received his first collegiate win at the Washington and Jefferson Invitational this year.
So we talk about a couple of the freshmen stepping up, and obviously you finish 9 out of 18 at the W&J Invitational, which is a big improvement from what the team did last year, but we need more people to step up other than Colby Morris. So out of the freshmen you named, or maybe some of the other wrestlers, who can we maybe expect to dabble in more and maybe see some undefeated records at Invitationals, or even just pick up a couple wins to try and move Waynesburg up in the rankings?
When it comes to wrestling this year, I think that the freshman class is going to be a big help. I've noticed people like Gavin Novak and also Jesse Orban have really stepped up this year already. I've also seen that JT Hollyfield, who's a sophomore here, he is coming off an injury from last year, so I'm really interested to see how he's going to do when it comes to that, just because coming off a season with an injury is hard. But he did receive his first win this year after his injury last year, and then he went on to get back-to-back wins at the Washington and Jefferson Invitational. So I think seeing his progress this year from his injury will definitely be a big thing.
So there's also some players out there too, like Josh Kuslock, who finished 5th at 141 pounds. So can you just talk about Josh, the senior, and a couple things that he's done for the team?
Yeah, Josh has done great this year. I think he did really well at the Washington Jefferson Invitational, and I think that he's going to be big alongside Colby Morris. Josh is also a senior along with Kobe, so I think that whenever it comes to them being together on the wrestling team, I think it's just going to be really good for the team. Obviously, last year they didn't have the greatest season, so I think those two seniors are going to have to step up and lead a lot more this year.
So up and coming, we have the Waynesburg Duels. It'll be this Saturday. Last year was RIT, Shippensburg, and Messiah that all came to Waynesburg for that Invitational. And Colby Morris went 3-0 on the day last year, dominated everybody. What should be some expectations that we have this year for this Invitational at Waynesburg?
I think we're definitely expecting to see Colby Morris step up once again and do just as well as he did last year. Obviously, he's doing great already this season, and he's a great leader. After talking to a few of the wrestling players on the team this year, I've noticed that they all really like playing with Colby, they like competing with him, and that he really steps up and helps them when it comes to these Waynesburg duels. I think also, again, like I said, freshmen have definitely stepped up this year, and there's a pretty big freshman class for the wrestling team. So I think they need to follow in Colby's footsteps, realize that he is motivated to win this duel and do better than they did last year. So I think following in his footsteps in just wrestling a good match is what they need to look at.
Well, when you got a guy like Colby Morris out there, you got to expect guys to follow in his footsteps. Thank you very much, Mia, for joining us, talking about the wrestling team. When we come back, we'll sit down and talk about women's basketball with Joey Cirillo.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. Today we're going to be moving into the hoop side of things. We got Joey Cirillo with us today to talk about women's basketball. So Joey, the team has played a couple games recently. They're 0-2, not the start that they wanted, but on paper it looks a little worse than how it was in reality. So can you just give us a rundown of the last two games they played against Case Western and Muskingum?
So both of these teams are not from PAC play, which is normal for many Jackets teams here on Waynesburg campus. But for these two teams, we normally face them every year. And this time it was better than other years in past, as we were normally kept up with them in the first half of play, but in that second half and fourth quarter specifically, they really slacked and they really went down from what they were doing in that first half of play. A lot of the shooting was bad in the first half, came back in the second half, but then the defensive skills just really lacked in those first 2 games there. So I'm looking for a rebound here on this Wednesday here with Pitt's Greensburg, as we will face them on Wednesday. But I'm looking for a rebound from them. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you talked about how it's a big improvement from last year. Last year, you lose to Muskingum by 51, and last year you lose to Case Western by 46. This year, Muskingum, you lose by 12. Case Western, you lose by 20. So a little bit of an improvement there. But it's odd because you only have one starter from last year returning to the lineup. It's a completely new starting lineup for Coach Sam Jones. Talk a little bit about some of the new people we've seen in the Waynesburg system.
Well, it's a completely different lineup here. There are 3 freshman starters, Mia Hankins, Cara McFadden, and Kayla Howard, both starting here. 2 point guards and 1 guard underneath the basket there. And all 3 of them have been great so far. Mia Hankins having 17 points, leading the team so far. She's had 2 games, 8.5 points per game so far. McFadden in third with 11 points. Howard not getting as many points under the basket there, mainly because they're doing a lot of shooting outside of the 3-point line there, which has hurt them a little bit in these past 2 games. But I'm looking for this young group to come in. Out of 24 players on the team, 5 of them are returning. 1 is a grad student, and the rest are all sophomores and freshmen. So this team is very young, and it's looking good for the future. And hopefully for this year, they'll get it together. They'll be able to find that chemistry. Definitely with this young group, you have a lot of freshmen, like those 3 that are starting that, again, their first game starting at college level. You kind of got to adjust to that. So these first 2 games they've done very well, showing that they can do it. But I think that as they get through, as they get more time, they'll get their rhythm.
Yeah, we look at the games we were talking about earlier. They were close multiple times. Like we have in the one game they were up 52-48. I believe that was the Muskingum game. They were up 52-48, with 5 minutes left in the game. And then there was a point before that they were down 51-39 in the same Muskingum game with 8 minutes left. So you could see that this team can come back and get some points. And in the Case Western game, it was 33-31 at half. They were down 2. So this team can come close, but it seems like they let it slip away. So Joey, what are some things that this team can do to stop giving up these enormous leads at the end of the game? Maybe fall apart a little bit. What is making them fall apart, and how do they fix it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that they're not doing as many rebounds as they should be. You're a basketball team. One of the biggest parts of it is rebounding. You got to get under the basket. You got to get those points just from somebody shooting outside of the 3-point line. They can't get it in, so then you have Howard under there, just getting it, throwing it right back up. You at least get 2 points out of that. They haven't done a lot of that. They've really been blocked out of the paint there. And I think one thing is you can't be shooting from the 3-point line as much. Mia Hankins went 0 for 6 in the first half against Muskingum in that first game that she's ever played in. Then she came back in that second half with 2 that went through. But it's just one of those things. In that 3-point line, there's a lot of shooting coming from there. I think you need to maybe step in a little bit more, do some more jump shots, do some more layups, and see where that can get you. If you're leading, then you can start shooting for those 3-pointers. But now, when you're leading, you can't be doing that as often.
Yeah, you talked about living and dying by the 3 ball. For Waynesburg in the 2 games, they are 11 for 50 shooting the 3 ball. You touched on trying to get into the paint more, moving inside that 3-point line. How can Waynesburg do that with the size that is kind of lacking in this team? They have a lot of girls that are in that range of point guard size, about 5'4" to maybe 5'7", 5'8". So how can Waynesburg kind of make something happen with the size that they don't have to get into the paint?
Well, I think Jones sees something in these girls more than we do right now. Hankins and McFadden both have this little bit of pizzazz on them when they're handling the ball. McFadden, a lot of the times in that first game, had a lot of juke outs of a lot of different players, and she was able to get in, but she was never able to put it up. I think if you just have a little more players getting in on the paint instead of being outside on the 3-point line, then you'll be able to get some more plays going through. They're doing a lot better with the passing than last year, and they're doing a lot better just, being a team. So I think that this aspect is going to come in, and it's going to have to come in if they want to get these wins. It's a matter of time, I think. Again, this team is young. They have a dynamic, but one thing that is kind of pressing on them is that Jones is doing this thing where every now and then they're leading, and then he takes all 5 of the starting out, and he puts 5 new people in. They're all cold, and they start, and they're thrown right into the mix. So the rotation's a little weird in my opinion, but granted, I've only seen 2 games so far, so maybe it'll smooth out later on, but right now the rotation seems a little off, but we'll see what happens.
So we were talking a little about like the chemistry of a little bit of how we have these 3 freshmen and they're kind of getting warm and used to each other and everything like that. But Marley Wolf is the only senior who is out there with these freshmen. So do you think that she is going to lead these 3 freshmen and maybe take them under their wing essentially and kind of just nurse them into being better stars than they are right now?
Well, I think she totally is, and she has so far. She's leading the team with minutes, 51 minutes, with Mia Hankins being 1 minute behind her at 50, and the other freshmen also behind them there. But shortly, I think that Marley Wolf is going to get that experience to them. She's going to be that leader they need, and I could see later on maybe them getting that leadership and maybe Wolf taking a step back, as they're going to need to adjust to the life outside of this season and looking into next season later on, and how they're going to be mainly a sophomore and junior team as they all move on.
Well, thank you, Joey, so much for sitting with us and talking about some women's hoops. Don't go anywhere, though. We're going to be talking about men's hoops coming up right here on JSW.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
Welcome back into our final segment on Jacket Sports Weekly. Still Logan, still Seth, but now joined by Michael McKenzie, down to talk to us about men's basketball. You talked about volleyball. We've transitioned you over now to men's hoops. And 2-1 record to open the season. Talk a little bit about the first 3 games that this team has played so far.
So it's been a good start to the season, obviously. 2-1 to start the season. Last year wasn't necessarily a great year at all for Coach Fusina and the Waynesburg men's basketball team. So getting off to the 2-1 start that they have has been really big for this team. I feel like that a lot of it has to do with some of the experience that they have on this team. Senior Anton Baker, junior transfer Jordan McCloy transferring over from Randolph College, PJ Suggs, another junior, Corey Mitchum, another junior. They got a lot of experienced guys on this team that have played collegiate basketball before, and I feel like that their experience, their leadership has been a huge reason that this team's been able to win 2 out of their first 3 games, because they haven't played perfect games. They haven't played great, exceptional basketball where if they didn't win, it would be surprising. There are a lot of things to work on for this Waynesburg men's basketball team, but being able to rely on that leadership to win their first 2 games has been great for this team to build momentum to start the season.
So we talk about those transfers that you just discussed. Like, those guys have been a key factor. So what have they really done to make them stand out from the other guys who have been on the floor for a while now, like Wilt and other people like that? What makes them kind of stand out rather than these other guys who have been here for a little bit?
I feel like it's a bit of their skill sets, specifically Jordan McCloy. You look at Waynesburg, they're a team that wants to get the ball into the paint, move the ball around a little bit, and get shots at the rim, but McCloy's more that shooter type. He's shooting 42.9% from 3 right now. Having that added element with McCloy being the guard, the ball handler, and also being able to shoot the 3 ball, have a lot of range, I feel like that's huge for this Waynesburg University men's basketball team to have that added element to the offense. Again, it hasn't been a perfect offense. There have been some bumps in the road, but having that ability to shoot the 3 ball at such a high clip with McCloy, that's a huge added element to this offense that's really going to help them as we go on throughout the season.
And we saw a lot last year. Obviously, you weren't here last year, so you wouldn't know. Last year, it was usually 7, maybe 8 guys if you're lucky to come off the bench for Coach Fusina. Now it seems a lot more guys are getting some playing time. You see anywhere from maybe 9, 10 guys. So he's added a little bit more to the rotation with the transfers that came in, with the freshmen that came in. How can we expect the lineup to kind of stay at a steady pace? We had Shirillo come on say the women's team, it's kind of so-and-so about who comes in, who comes out, but how can Fusina keep a steady starting 5 and steady 3 or 4 coming off the bench?
I feel like he's done a good job with his rotations, rotating one or two in at a time. And with how you do rotations, it fluctuates from coach to coach, from watcher to watcher. Me personally, I like the way Fusina is doing things with his rotation. One, maybe two guys at a time rotating in, keeping things relatively fresh. A couple of names that I think we should watch for moving forward. They won't light up the stat sheet, but there are a couple of depth pieces. They'll play 5-10 minutes here and there in a game. A couple of sophomores, Corey Easton and Tyreek Williams. Those two dudes are going to be kind of defensive specialists more so. They're going to do the things that don't show up on the stat sheet, really the dirty work. And I feel like that those two guys in particular, but having some of those sophomores that are willing to do the dirty work and don't need to show up on the stat sheet, that added element to their depth is going to be another thing that really propels them moving forward to have a potentially successful season.
So we were talking about subs and everything like that, and like you just said, but are there any players that you feel have not been getting enough time, maybe should be sprinkled in there just a little bit more rather than these 8 that they have, which has been successful so far, but do you think there's any out there that maybe deserve a little bit more or are looking to bounce until maybe the 6th or 7th man out there, do you think?
I'd say that one dude who played himself into more time like that, Jalen Davis. He got less than 20 minutes in the first 2 games of the season. That Saturday game that they played at the Bill Suddick Holiday Tournament against Pitt Bradford, he ended up playing 31 minutes, 14 points, 12 rebounds, ended up putting up a double-double. It was a great performance for Davis, and I had the chance to speak to Coach Fusina earlier today, and he mentioned that. Davis had a great weekend, specifically on Saturday, had a great game there. Wasn't in the starting lineup the first 3 games of the season, but he's definitely played himself into more minutes. That's going to be a guy who's going to play a lot more moving forward, and I get that overtime definitely added to his minutes, but 31 minutes on Saturday from 17 minutes on Friday, that's a big jump for Davis, and being able to put up the double-double, the 14-12 performance, that speaks to the type of dude that they could have in Davis coming off the bench or even starting if they so choose to move him into the starting lineup moving forward.
So we talked about how the team wasn't phenomenal last year. It was very shy of that, if we want to put it bluntly. It was not a great season for Waynesburg men's hoops. But now you've got a guy like Anton Baker returning to the team as one of your bigs. You just mentioned Davis, who's working his way into the minutes. Your next game is this upcoming Saturday, conference game, your first one of the year against Bethany. How can Waynesburg, now that they have 2 solid big men, compete in the PAC and prove people wrong on why they were voted number 9 in the polls?
I think it's all about ball movement and getting the ball into the paint at a more consistent pace. Waynesburg, they were +6 on the glass, so rebounding at least, that's something that Waynesburg's going to have to do really well moving forward. They were +6 in offensive rebounds this past Saturday. And they're a team that really likes to score in the paint. They outscored Pitt Bradford 42-30 in the paint, and Waynesburg put up 82 points in that game. So over half of their points came in the paint against Pitt Bradford. They want to get the ball in there, but it's all about moving the ball from one side of the floor to the other and not kind of having less spacing on the floor and keeping it on one side of the floor, whether it be the left side or the right side, just kind of keeping it there, allowing a defense to block up passing lanes, get traps towards the sideline and force turnovers. You move the ball from one corner to the other, a lot of ball movement, passing from these guards, and then you end up finding the guys in the paint like 6'7" Jalen Davis or 6'5" Anton Baker or 6'4" PJ Suggs. Those guys are going to be the big contributors to this offense as a collective group, considering that this team really wants to get shots around the rim and off the glass.
So we have a lot of new guys, like we've been talking about all of this segment. But the chemistry seems to have been improved a lot from last year. I know you weren't here last year, but the chemistry has seemed to improve immaculately. Like, players are being able to go out and play as a team. Like last year, it really didn't seem like that. So do you think that those transfers are connecting well and having a good chemistry altogether?
I think that they are. I think that this team has a bit of an energy to it, an extra edge. In that game that we watched, at least, we did the Waynesburg University Sports Network production for that game against McDaniel. There was a lot of energy from that team. They played with a lot of passion, I thought at least. So having that, I believe that these transfers, specifically, McLeod and Corey Mitchum, those two added a lot of energy, I felt like, to this team. And having that energy, that passion for the game, adds to the chemistry that a team can have. And that has been a big part of being able to win these 2 games, despite not playing their best basketball.
Well, Michael McKenzie, thank you very much for joining us to talk about men's hoops. Waynesburg grabbed its first win since 2018 as a home opener. See how the rest of the season goes with the 2-1 start. But that's all for this episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. Make sure you stay tuned every week for more Jacket Sports content.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.